What if Naruto was sent into Infant Avenger verse? This is second part of the series, so let's start the series. At Ichiraku's, Thor had received his first bowl of ramen, taking his first bite of food in what had seemed like forever. He was delighted as he swallowed the mixture of broth, noodles, and meat. He had never tasted something so unique before. In a couple of mouthfuls, he had finished the bowl, much to the shock of Naruto and Sakura, who had barely got past their first 2 bites of food. "You there, Master Chef, bring me another," he called out, Tucci himself surprised at how quickly this man had scoffed his food. As another bowl was placed down in front, the God of Thunder tucked in straight away. Before long, he has ordered 2 more bowls, then another 3 bowls piled up on top of that. Naruto was shocked at the man's gluttonous appetite. Damn, he's almost eating as much as me or Choji. Is that the appetite from being a god? Another! He slammed the bowl, vibrating the table where the 2 ninja were sat. Tucci, recognizing the stranger's hunger for more food, were busy making sure all the components were cooked right, and rigorously served his new customer another bowl of food. Normally, Naruto would have stopped at around 3 or 4 bowls, with Choji seemingly going to 5 and or 6. But Thor looked like he would even surpass that record. Sakura, observing Thor's appetite, had to say something. "Thor-san, are you sure it's okay to eat that much? It's just the amount of blood you coughed up earlier had me concerned and..." "Nonsense, pink healer!" His face lit up with amusement. "I haven't eaten this well in ages." Turning to Naruto, he added after slurping another mouthful of noodles, "Orange one, I must thank you for recommending me such an exquisite feast. I've not had something this nice in a while." "Hee, don't mention it," he replied slowly, noticing that his own gluttonous appetite had now been surpassed. Just then, the group was approached by the trio of Yamanaka Ino, Naro Shikamaru and Akimichi Choji entering the establishment. "Hey, I thought we heard you guys in here. What's up?" Ino spoke as her eyes were directed to the presence of the older man with the rough short hair, the facial scar going across his right eye, and coarse, unshaven beard, her jaw slightly parted at his appearance. "Who is he? He's so handsome," she thought as her cheeks went slightly pink. Now normally, dark-haired boys were more her type, but there was something about this stranger that she couldn't put her finger on. "So what's going on here then?" Shikamaru asked, noticing the company that was with Naruto and Sakura. Sakura quickly got to her feet and replied, "This is Thor Odinson. He's a visitor from a village out of town. We've been asked to look after him for a few days after he was found injured." The kunoichi really didn't want to lie, but for now, it was for the best. The boy with the black spiky hair held out his hand to greet Thor. "Naro Shikamaru, a pleasure to meet you." He gestured his 2 teammates. "This is Choji." The large boy with the armor waved. "Yo. And this is Ino." "Ino?" Noticed how starstruck she was, he snapped his fingers to break her out of a trance. "Ino, don't you want to introduce yourself to the nice man?" He sniggered, noticing her blush that had stained her cheeks. Pulling a face at her teammate, she reached out her hand. "Yamanaka Ino, my family runs a flower shop here in the village." Thor smiled as he shook her hand. "A maiden that sells flowers? My, I've only been here a few hours and already I'm surprised." The female blonde felt her heart flutter at the stranger's polite and charming manner. "Maiden? Who's he calling a maiden? Oh Lord, he's beautiful. Who exactly was this guy, and why was he being so courteous to her?" Sakura, noticing what he had said to her, felt a tinge of jealousy as she reached over to confront her rival. "What's your deal, Ino pig?" The god, confused at her reaction, commented, "Why do you refer to the maiden to that of the animal that rolls in the mud, pink one?" Choji, Naruto, and Shikamaru, doing their best to hold in their laughter, ended up losing it completely at that remark. The 3 fell out of their seats and rolled on the floor with laughter. The 2 kunoichi squared up to one another, with Sakura feeling embarrassed by the god's quip. "Looks like your new friend has a thing for me, wouldn't you say, forehead?" Ino smirked, tossing her hair to one side with pride. "What did you say?" The pinkette pulled up her fist ready to land a punch. "He's actually just being nice. Ever thought of that?" "Yeah, well, I didn't hear him call you anything now, did he?" As the god looked confused at why 2 young girls were arguing with one another, he finished up what was his 8th bowl. He slammed down the bowl and cleared his throat. Sakura and Ino turned from their argument and the boy stopped laughing, noticing the number of bowls he had piled up. Using his good hand, he reached over to Tucci and shook his hand gracefully. "Master Chef, that was some of the best food I have had in years." This place could serve banquets to even the saddest of faces. Thank you for your hospitality. Tucci was bamboozled by the man's generosity and the amount he had eaten. He hadn't had a customer like this in years. It was a pleasure, my good man. Any friend of Naruto's is a friend of mine. Please come back if you want to try the rest of the menu. Tell you what, because you are such a good sport, the meal's on the house for today. Naruto, confused at the amount of food that had been eaten, beamed with happiness. Thanks a lot, old man. Choji looked gobsmacked. How in the world can you eat as much as me? Naruto and I usually have the record for most bowls. Stout one, I have quite the appetite, the god replied. If I could, I'd have eaten 100 bowls by now. Thor stood up and stretched slightly. Right then, that was pleasant. He paused for a second, thinking of what to do next. Tell me, young ones, where does one go to unwind here? My mind and body could use some relaxation after today. There's a hot springs further down that way, Shikamaru responded, still curious about Thor's appearance in the village. If you want to unwind after a troublesome day, that's where most of us like to go. I'm not sure what to think, but this guy's aura, it's nothing I've ever felt before. His eyes darted towards the strange axe at the god's feet. What kind of weapon is that? I thought axes were used for chopping wood. Strange. Excellent idea. Thank you, Spiky One, Thor replied blissfully. Then that's where we shall spend some time. But Thor, what about your injury? Naruto added, wondering if it was safe for someone to bathe in his kondatin. It's okay, Sakura assured. He can cover it up using a medical sleeve. The hot springs can cater for those who have injuries, however. The pink kunoichi and her blonde female friend only had one thing in their mind. They were going to try and see Thor naked, or shall we say try to. Sakura had already taken a peek, but to see the whole thing would be an amazing sight to behold. I have to beat Ino Pig in there. No way is she going to get one up on me. Ino licked her lips devilishly. We'll see about that, forehead. If anyone takes a peek at this gorgeous man, it'll be me. Naruto turned his head and noticed the daze the two women were in. What are you two doing? Both girls looked like they were under a spell, their mouths drooling slightly. Mind your own business. Both replied with folded arms and a huff. Shikamaru shook his head. Troublesome women. He muttered with a sign of disinterest. The blonde ninja fist pumped the air. Yash. Let's go. As Thor followed the ninja onward down the road, he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with optimism and positivity. He was a stranger in this world, but the presence of Naruto and his comrades made him feel like family. Although it was a nice revelation, the back of his mind was still clouded with anger and frustration. How were the rest of the Avengers coping without him? Where was Thanos now? Could he possibly use the stones again? Questions upon questions ran through his head, with the answers seemingly nowhere in sight. In a hideout in the depths of the hidden grass village, lay what was remaining of Akatsuki, their leader. Pain sat bemused by the actions of what had taken place over the last few weeks. Sasori was no more and the one-tailed beast had been captured. It was time to move ahead quicker than he had originally anticipated. After hearing what had happened at the Tenchi Bridge, he had realized that Orochimaru may have become a bigger threat than he originally thought. What becomes of the next-tailed beast? Entered the soft voice of Konan, the only female member of the group. From what I heard, the boy with the 9 tails did quite the spectacle in the forests nearby. Pain looked at her with a sharpened gaze. Yes, and it seems that we'll have to proceed in another way. The 9 tails is simply too much of a problem to consider at the moment. However, the next-tailed beast, the 3 tails, strikes me as interesting. In the meantime, I've sent Haiden and Kakuzu out to take care of the 2 tails at Kumogakure. The female's eyes remained passive as she looked upon her leader with slight concern. Are you sure they can handle it? I feel Haiden is unstable and might get carried away. Regardless, Pain replied pessimistically, even if he does, it will be a small price to pay for what we have to deal with. He looked around the room and felt a strange aura in the air. He couldn't describe the feeling, but it felt unworldly to him. Conan began speaking again. By the way, did you notice the sky earlier? A strange lightning storm in the middle of the day. Very peculiar. Do you think it's the work of a tailed beast? She wondered, having noticed the unusual anomaly in the weather. Pain hesitated to answer at first. I saw it too. I'm not sure about it either. He sat in deep thought for a moment. If the presence of someone else besides Orochimaru was getting in the way, this could severely hinder their plans. Where are Itachi and Kisame at the moment? I'm not sure, Conan replied. They last checked in a few days ago at the Land of Waves. I believe they were called in on an assassination contract by an unknown employer. Payne nodded. When they're done, I'm sending them to the Valley of the End. Who knows if there's a tailed beast we haven't checked up on yet. I have the feeling it could be something greater. I see, Conan complied with a look of uncertainty. And what of Orochimaru? He is of no threat to us at the moment, the leader replied with a sign of assurance. If he does however become an issue, I will deal with him myself. Back in Konoha, Naruto and the others headed towards the bathhouse in motion. Tell me something, Thor wondered with a question that has been bugging him for a while now. What is it that you people do? You said you were ninja, but where I come from, that meaning is far different. And what was Kakashi earlier? He disappeared into nothing, like magic. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow at him. You don't have shinobi where you live. What you saw was simple ninjutsu. In this case, that was the Shunshin no Jutsu, the ability to teleport to different places at high speed. Ninjutsu? Interesting. How does it work? Does it require spells or incantations? Not exactly, the lazy genius continued. It's basically the molding of chakra, the life energy that runs throughout the whole world. You mold chakra together and with a combination of hand seals to perform jutsu. Jutsu itself is broken down into 3 types. The first is ninjutsu, which uses chakra to perform and often a different elemental techniques such as wind, fire, and earth. The second is taijutsu, the art of using hand-to-hand combat and martial arts to fight with. The last one is genjutsu, the art of using illusions to fool the enemy into seeing something they don't want to see. He shrugged with a smirk. And that's just the base of it really. There's a lot more including forbidden jutsu, bloodlines techniques. Thor was amazed at what he was hearing. So all these techniques one can perform themselves. What do you specialize in then, Shikamaru, the boy corrected him. I specialize in shadow techniques. I can use my shadow to trap another person dead in their tracks so they're unable to move. Thor's curiosity grew more, turning to Sakura. And you, what was that power you used earlier to heal me? That was a healing jutsu, Sakura replied softly. It took a lot of chakra to work, especially with your arm in that state. I see, replied the Asgardian who had taken pleasure in learning this new information. Very interesting indeed. I have a friend back home who would only wonder about the idea of ninjutsu. He was musing to himself what his friend, Dr. Stephen Strange, would think of these people using this special kind of power. With him being a wizard, he would probably understand it quite easily. The gang arrived at the bathhouse, with the ninjas splitting up into the men's side and the women's side. Thor admired how nice the place looked and the warm atmosphere it created. A few moments passed and the 2 groups entered the respective baths. Ino and Sakura walked out together, not making eye contact with each other until they entered the water. As Ino sat down in the water, letting the warmth comfort her and massage her body, she had questions on her mind regarding the stranger that had accompanied them. Okay, forehead, start explaining. She pulled a face of disgust at Sakura. Explain what? Sakura retorted with frustration. Who is that guy really? From what I heard of Shikamaru's chat with him, he doesn't sound like any normal civilian I know of. Any civilian of any neighboring village would have at least heard of ninjutsu. So what is he? Sakura looked away for a second, still not wanting to make eye contact. Yes, Ino was her friend and this seemed wrong to keep this from her. But as she had said to Naruto, what if word got out that they were protecting a literal god from other people? It's just, well, she hesitated with worry in her eyes. On the other side of the wall, Naruto, Thor, Choji and Shikamaru were getting acquainted in the bath. Thor sat nearest the door, while the other 3 sat spaced apart from each other in the square-shaped bath. This is amazing, the god of thunder mused, closing his eyes as he felt his cares slip away due to the water being so comforting to his muscles. I should ask Stark to build me one of these for myself. Stark? Choji questioned the strange name. Is that a friend of yours? Yes, a little hot-headed, but knows how to build things, that's for sure. What kind of things does he build? Is he like a blacksmith? Naruto chipped in. Thor chuckled. Oh no, nothing like that. He's responsible for robots, suits of armor, advanced technology, that kind of thing. Robots? Surely that's just fiction, Shikamaru added with a puzzled look. What do these robots do anyhow? From what he had read, robots to him were the product of science fiction stories, something that could never exist in a world with shinobi. They serve him, or better yet they tried to destroy us at one point when we were at our most vulnerable, It was basically the end of the world, and he stopped himself, wondering if he should continue or not. Maybe such a relaxed situation wasn't the place for the story about an out-of-control robot with artificial intelligence that almost ended the world. Perhaps that's a story for another time. I've rambled on too much anyhow. He opened one eye towards the young blonde. Naruto, tell me a story of yours. I'd like to know more about you and your friends here. Sure thing, Naruto grinned with a big smile. Now, where do we begin? He recollected thoughtfully. How about the most recent series of events, Naruto? Shikamaru interrupted. We'll be here forever if you start too far back. Naruto huffed. Don't see you doing anything better, you lazy ass. So the young ninja began telling his story of how his life as a ninja began, starting with first meeting Kakashi, the first confrontation with Zabuza, the entry into the Chunin exams, the attack on the village, the defection of Sasuke, the mission to retrieve him, and the most recent event of reuniting with him, and the battle with Orochimaru. Shikamaru and Choji added in their own contributions to the points they were in, which included both of their near-death experiences with the Sound 4. Thor himself was marveled at the stories that had been told to him, curious at how such a world like this could exist. Swordsman? A snake manipulator? A boy who controlled sand? All of these things would be considered somewhat normal back in his world. He had to deal with a talking raccoon, an overgrown tree, wizards, monsters, and genetically enhanced human beings. Then when I found out the Akatsuki was after me, it was because I carried the spirit of the nine-tailed fox, and Naruto carried on with his story, which Thor's eyes widened in surprise. Sorry, did you say you carried the spirit of a fox? Like a godly spirit? The god questioned, remembering what his brother Loki had said in his mind while he was out cold. Could this have been what Loki had meant by what he said of the blonde boy looks to be important? Naruto narrowed his eyes, looking down at the water that surrounded him. Yeah, but this is a demon who was supposed to destroy the village years ago, but ended up being sealed inside of me, for years. I didn't know. He clenched his fists. Growing up, I was alone, mistreated, and ignored by people in the village. I didn't know why that was, but eventually, I found good friends who accepted me and stood by me no matter what. Turning to face his friends, his expression relaxed, replaced with one of sincerity and comfort. You two are some of the best friends I've ever had. Damn right, Naruto, Choji hailed. Demon or not, you've always been one of my closest friends. Remember all those times we skipped Irika-sensei's classes? Yeah, Shikamaru chuckled. His classes were a drag, but it was just the time I spent with you guys which were important. He turned to Naruto with a face of compassion, something that no one would normally see from the lazy genius. And you, Naruto, I always thought you were weird, but at the same time, you were one of a kind. I didn't know what to expect from you. To be honest, I got to admit, you impressed not just me, but all of us. I'm proud to be your friend. The blonde Jinchuruki was tearing up inside, doing his best not to let his emotions leak out. Oh, you guys. I'm so glad to have you in my life. I must say you're quite the individual, Naruto. Thor spoke happily. You're a strong one, I can tell, and from what I've heard from your stories, you stand high to accomplish your goals in life. Whatever happens, I'm sure you'll make it. And as for this demon fox, it sounds like you have it under control too. The blonde boy had never smiled so much in his life. Thanks, Thor, I appreciate that. He held out his fist, to which the god fist bumped him in return. You're welcome. If Loki was telling the truth, could Naruto and his demon fox spirit be the key to somehow sending me home? Or could it mean something else? Back on the woman's side, Sakura had told Ino the whole story about Thor after much persuasion, on the condition that she didn't tell anyone else. Are you crazy? Ino shouted. You're protecting a literal god. How does that even comprehend? Shh! Sakura hissed. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but that's what he told us. Tsunade-sama said she's going to find a way to send him back home. For now, Naruto and I are going to look after him for a few days. Oh? Ino retorted with a tinge of jealousy. And why should you get to look after that delicious hunk of man? He's obviously into blondes. Otherwise he wouldn't have called me maiden. She stood up out of the water and gestured with her hips. I didn't hear him call you anything, EY forehead? The pinkette growled, as she watched her friend pose sexily in the water. Oh yeah, Ino pig? Well, guess what? I already had a peek at that physique of his while he was in the hospital, so technically, I've already savored the goods. She stuck her tongue out. You did what? The blonde Kunoichi furrowed her eyebrows. That does it. I'm getting in my fair share of man before you rub any more of your stupid forehead into this. She jumped out the water, grabbed a towel to wrap round herself and headed towards the wall, where a small hole laid cracked in one of the bricks. Sakura, not wanting to be outdone by her friend again, did the same thing, shoving and pushing her friend against the wall, trying to get a peek through the hole. Out of the way, pig! She cried, shoving her friend to one side with a firm grip on her arm. Not a chance, forehead! Ino retorted as she grabbed her wrists in response. Noticing the commotion on the other side, Shikamaru looked at the dividing wall and shook his head. Those women are being such a drag. He muttered annoyingly. Are your friends always like this? Thor asked as he stepped out the water, applying a towel to himself. When they want to be, Choji added, joining his new friend. The commotion carried on for another few seconds before the wall produced a massive shock and bang noise. Guys, I think we better. Naruto gulped as he felt the room shake violently. It only meant one thing when a room started to shake and vibrate around him. Shinaro! Crash! Part of the wall cracked in half as a selection of bricks cascaded and crumbled down, breaking the divide between the two separate sides of the bathhouse. As dust filled the air, the Asgardian raised an eyebrow at the commotion that stood before him. Naruto, should I be concerned? He pondered with his arms folded. Naruto swallowed again. I want to say no, but considering Sakura-chan is one of the strongest women in this village, I would say yes. Shikamaru let out a frustrating sigh. Seriously, what is it with you two? He called out, hoping the girls would cease their behavior. The cloud of dust cleared and stepped forward both Ino and Sakura. Seriously, Sakura, that was uncalled for. Put a sock in it, Ino. I was just going to. As her vision cleared up, the first person she came into contact with was none other than her teammate, Uzumaki Naruto. Unfortunately, he was naked from the waist down. Her eyes were diverted to the boy's well-defined chest muscles, and everything else below that. Her face flushed red as a tomato as her gaze carried on up and down, causing her throat to dry up and break out in a sweat. Holy shit! Damn, that boy is fine. How the hell did I not notice that before? What have we been missing out on? Sakura heard her inner self scream as she remained fixated on the blonde. Meanwhile, Naruto had caught sight of Sakura's well-defined figure. The towel wrapped around her showed off her curves, and the way her hair was dripping across her silky smooth shoulders was the literally icing on the cake for him. Sakura-chan. He gawked, chewing his tongue. The pressure of a nosebleed was immediately felt within his nose, but he managed to squeeze the bridge before the blood started running. Damn, you're hot. A split second later, he realized he was still naked and quickly jumped back in the water to hide his modesty. The pinkette fell back onto her buttocks, startled by the sight that had been laid before her. Ino, however, had come into contact with Shikamaru, who was now equally as amazed at not just well-cut his physique was, but the way the boy's black hair was been let down. She had never seen Shikamaru with his ponytail out before, and this was indeed a rare sight. Her face flushed red, as she was now seeing her own teammate in a new light. Ino, seriously? What's with all this? Choji said, interrupting her train of thought. That's what I'd like to know, Thor added sternly with a scowl. Did you break the wall so you could peek on these fine young men and me? Isn't that what is called perving? The two girls turned their heads slowly to see the god of thunder looking quite cross with his arms folded in nothing but a towel. Not wanting to face the wrath of a god, they stepped back, faces flushed with heat, and ran towards the changing rooms of the bathhouse. The boys all looked at one another, wondering what the heck has just happened. In the changing room, the two kunoichi caught their breath and sat down. Damn, he was something. Ino panted as she grabbed a second towel to dry her hair, but it was the surprise of seeing Shikamaru that had caught her off guard. Shikamaru, I'll give him something, that's for sure, but that Thor, wow, she drooled in happiness. You were right about the whole god thing, alright. She blinked, noticing her friend didn't look as pleased as she did. Sakura? Sakura, on the other hand, was more shocked by the fact she had seen Naruto naked from head to toe. She had seen him shirtless when she was younger and didn't take much note, but back then, she had sort of noticed that he had something going on with all the training he did. Now though, seeing what almost 3 years of training had done, Naruto had never looked more attractive. Coupled with those cerulean eyes and whisker marks on his face, the pink-haired kunoichi was simply amazed at how mature and handsome her teammate had become. Right now, It wasn't just the thought of how handsome Naruto was, but it was also the revelation of how he had always been there for her, how he had always made her happy when she was down, how he constantly risked his life for her. A few weeks ago at the Tenchi Bridge, she had failed him, seeing him transform and attack Orochimaru through pure hatred and anger. He was completely lost when the Nine Tails took him over. She had wanted to help out, but couldn't. She felt guilty that she couldn't have done anything to stop him. She didn't want to see the face of a demon. She wanted to see the face of that goofy, knucklehead ninja who she grew up with. The same boy who had risked so much and was going to stop at nothing to achieve his dream. Now, all she wanted to do is protect him no matter what the cost. What is this feeling? I've never felt so ashamed, yet at the same time, I'm feeling so protective of him. Is this what Yamato Taishu was trying to say to me after that horrific battle? That I really do care for Naruto more than anyone else. Possibly even more than Sasuke-kun. Her mind flashed back to seeing those cold, dead eyes of the Uchiha who had brought his blade up to Naruto, threatening right there and then to kill him if he carried on cursing him. I could have lost him. If he had wanted to, he could have. Sakura. Ino gestured, poking her friend's shoulder. Are you okay? Did seeing Naruto. Huh! She snapped out of her daydream. No, she bit her lip. No, never mind. That was just embarrassing. We should clean ourselves up. A wave of guilt washed over her as she realized what she had done. She felt awful at how her stupid, challenging behavior had not only humiliated the blonde, but also herself. Would he be able to forgive her? A life without Sasuke had been one thing, but a life without Naruto, she couldn't even begin to imagine. In the land of waves, the sky was pouring down with heavy rainfall. At a small food shack just on the outskirts of the village, sat the Akatsuki members Uchiha Itachi and Hashigaki Kisame. The two had finished their assassination contract carried out by an unknown employer who had some connections to the criminal underworld. The hit itself had been a success, until they found out the employer was going to double-cross them and sell them out to be captured by the neighboring shinobi nations. Kisame, known for his sadistic tendencies, had shaved the man with his sword, Samahata, leaving nothing but a corpse without the skin. You know it's a shame, Kisame commented as he enjoyed a plate of dango. I was beginning to like the poor bastard. It's a sad story when you try and make friends with someone and they double-cross you like that. Itachi looked up at the sky with a dull look on his face. Indeed, you can't seem to get enough valuable work nowadays. Kisame looked at his partner irritably. Itachi was always a man of few words, letting his actions speak for him. So, now what? Doesn't the boss want us to go grab another tailed beast? It sounds like Sasori bit off more than he could chew when he faced off with that brat from Konoha, am I right? He chuckled evilly. Sasori was genius, the Uchiha replied darkly, a madman. But at the same time, he wanted immortality, an escape from this world. It looks like fate dealt him a different fate. He was curious at how he could have lost to someone so easily. He had heard a kunoichi had dealt the final blow, but who would have been strong enough to have killed Sasori? It didn't matter though. What was on his mind was getting to Uzumaki Naruto, and the nine tails that resided within him. The rainy sky was suddenly enveloped with a crash of thunder. The two rogue ninja looked up to see a trail of blue lightning go across the sky like an ocean of waves crashing against rocks in the sea. The surprising nature of the weather was something that neither of them had ever seen before. Interesting sky, Itachi? Kisame said amusingly. Out the corner of his eye, a crow appeared with a scroll in its mouth. Itachi received the scroll and opened it. His eyes narrowed at the instructions written down. Come, he stated, standing up and opening his umbrella. We have our orders. Oh? Kisame wondered. Where does he want us now? The Valley of the End. Half an hour passed and the group reunited outside the bathhouse. Knowing there would be a lot of questions, Ino and Sakura didn't hope for much. More than anything, they'd probably receive an earful from their friends regarding their behavior. The sun had begun to set, the sky glowing a beautiful combination of orange, lilac and pink decorating the clouds like an artistic canvas. Thor, bemused but annoyed at what had happened, didn't have much else to say on the matter. So, young ones, I'll forgive you for the fact that you tried to peek on me, but please, refrain from repeating this enigmatic behavior in the future, okay? His face cast a stern, serious look which placed the two girls in an uncomfortable position. Naruto, on the other hand, did his best to avoid eye contact with Sakura. But after what had just happened, that wasn't going to be the easiest of actions. Shikamaru shook his head. Geez, this whole thing became a drag alright, Ino, no offense, but I kind of expected better from you. His voice shrouded with disappointment. Ino lowered her gaze, not wanting to look at him any longer. Hey, I'm sorry. To all of you I mean. She hung her head in shame, knowing that this could affect her relationship with Shikamaru, but she hoped that he would forgive her in due time. Choji gave a small smile. Don't sweat it, Ino, he replied softly. We'll look back on this and laugh about it someday. His reaction caused the blonde Kunoichi to turn beetroot again. As if her face hadn't been flushed enough today with what had happened, the air remained silent between the groups for a moment, before the Asgardian spoke up again. Alas, it is not worth pining over such a thing. He nodded at Naruto, to which the younger blonde gave a small nod back. Where will I be staying tonight? You can stay at my place. I've got enough room and it'll be cool to have my own bodyguard. He grinned with amusement. Your own bodyguard? Last time I checked, your leader asked you to look after me, Thor replied with a small chuckle. But I can see it working both ways. Very well then. He raised his axe and holstered it on his back. Great! Naruto fist-pumped the air, before looking at Sakura, whose gaze had not left the floor since she left the building. Sakura-chan, you don't mind, do you? The pink-haired girl looked up slightly, still feeling ashamed at what had taken place. It's fine, Naruto, just... Her eyes locked with him for a brief second before casting downward. Just let me know if anything happens, okay? You know where to find me. Excellent, we should be on our way. Thor turned to the trio of Team 10 once more. Ino, Shikamaru, Choji, it's been a pleasure to meet you all. You're all great company to be with. Shikamaru reached out his hand to shake with Thor's. It's been a pleasure, Thor-san. Same here. Here's me hoping I can challenge you to an eating contest soon, Choji added, remembering the appetite he had witnessed at Ichiraku's. Ino, still embarrassed by the whole situation, didn't say anything at first but was surprised when the god of thunder had bent down slightly to meet with her eyes. Thor, He reached over and softly kissed the back of her hand. Don't worry about it, you're still young, and I know someone who is just like you back home. His voice became more tender, dancing softly to her ears, all while her heart fluttered at his kind gesture. Besides, he continued with a whisper in her ear, I believe there is someone who likes you, he added slyly with a wink. Just give them a chance, okay? Ino was simply struck by how kind he was being, even after all the trouble she had put him through, even more so at what he had just mentioned to her. Who exactly was she worthy of? It had only been a few hours and she could have sworn that this stranger had done more to impress her than anyone else she had met before. Thank you, she beamed softly. Are you sure you will be okay, Thor-san? Sakura asked, getting ready to head in the direction of her house. The faster she got out of the situation, the better. Thor nodded. Of course. He turned to Naruto. Lead the way. The group said their respective goodbyes to each other as they headed away from the bathhouse. Sakura, however, was conflicted by her emotions at the present time. What had brought all this on just from seeing her teammate in a compromising position? Were these feelings even real? She had no idea what to think. Her heart gave her that sinking feeling, like the relationship she had with Naruto was over and he never wanted to see her again. But Naruto was a forgiving person, right? There was only one way to find out. But right now, she needed to speak to someone. She reached a crossroads in her path, but instead of heading to her home, she turned a corner and turned in another direction towards somewhere different, the home of Captain Yamato. On the path back to his apartment, Naruto and Thor got talking once again. So your friend, Sakura, she's a strange one, isn't she? You can say that, but Sakura-chan means the world to me. It was just really embarrassing earlier, that's all. The fact that they had practically seen each other naked was bad enough. Now they would probably have to make it up at some point. So you love her then? Naruto gathered a lump in his throat. Yeah, I do. His head turning away slightly. But it's difficult. You know about Sasuke, who I mentioned earlier? She still loves him to some degree. And I made a promise to bring him home to her no matter what the cost. It's her happiness more than anything I treasure about her. The god looked at the boy and how mentioning his friend seemed to sour his mood. How do you know she still wants to be with him? Huh? Naruto asked, confused at the older man's statement. I'm not an expert when it comes to love, but I've learned that if there is someone dear to you, you'll do everything you can for them. Have you asked if this Sasuke is still as important to her as he used to be? No, it's just, I don't know. His face fell in sadness. Thor placed his good hand on the boy's shoulder. I fell in love once. Her name was Jane Foster. A brilliant, beautiful woman. She was one of the bravest, strongest and kindest women I ever had the pleasure of meeting. Our relationship was a rocky start, but it was thanks to her. I felt something that I had never felt before. Yes, I was a god and she was a mere mortal, but I wanted nothing more than her to be by my side, even if I was constantly saving the world. His memories of her came flooding back in an instant. The one memory he wished he could ignore was the one where she had almost died due to the ether from the reality stone. But, after a disaster that almost destroyed her, I felt like I couldn't protect her. Our relationship grew somewhat weaker, and it eventually led to us breaking up. He sighed. I only wish I could have done more. What I'm saying is, don't leave it too late to confess to her how you really feel, Naruto. If it's meant to be, it will happen. The blonde boy's eyes widened. Here he was taking relationship advice from a god and he was left speechless. Thor smiled. It will be okay, trust me. Thank you. The two eventually reached Naruto's apartment and entered. His apartment remained the same since he had returned from training with Jiraiya. He had just replaced some of the furniture, meaning the couch and bed were a lot better than he previously owned. Make yourself at home, Naruto gestured as he removed his shoes and jacket. Thor took a brief look round. Noticing the condition the place was in, he was used to a similar sort of dwelling back home. After the events of New York, he had stayed with Steve Rogers for a few days in an apartment arranged by Director Fury. Rogers had a quaint little place on the outskirts of Brooklyn with all the modern amenities. However, in this world, Naruto only had appliances like a toaster, a kettle, a cooker. No fancy gadgets like wireless internet, computers and espresso machines here. Thor sat on the couch and stretched out, taking in the relaxation feeling of the comfortable furniture. In another dimension, back on Earth, it had been a few hours since the battle with Thanos had ended. The remaining Avengers looked around the valleys of Wakanda hoping to locate the God of Thunder, only to find no trace of him anywhere. This is insane, Steve Rogers, still recovering from his injuries, lamented in frustration. Where did Thor end up? That lightning storm, Natasha, also known as Black Widow, the former S.H.I.E.L.D. operative commented, it must have sent him somewhere. It can't be Asgard, came the disgruntled voice of Bruce Banner. Thanos ripped that place apart ages ago. I remember Heimdall using the last of his strength to send me to Earth. With him dead, no one can travel across dimensions without the Bifrost. What about the Space Stone? Rocket Raccoon injected, remembering that particular Infinity Stone. Doesn't that stone have the power to teleport people? Yes, but Thanos has it. Unless he used the stone to send him away and it was a delayed side effect. Rocket looked out in the distance of Wakanda, his face full of anguish and heartache. He had felt he had lost everything now more than ever. There was no sign of Peter Quill, Gamora, or Drax. His best friend Groot had vanished before his very eyes into nothingness. But now his new friend, the God of Thunder, had also vanished. Only a few mere hours of working and conversing together. It was a short time, but Rocket felt like had known Thor all his life, and he had taken great pride in helping him forging his new weapon. The situation was like being back on Ego's planet. Everything was falling apart, and Rocket thought he had to say goodbye to his friends again. But this time it felt like it was more permanent. The team of Yondu, Rocket Raccoon and Kraglin had just survived teleportation of nearly 700 jumps in order to save Peter Quill, who had been trapped on a planet with his father Ego. The shock of the rapid space jumps had ended faster than they had anticipated. Yondu picked himself up, shaking off the shocks of the trip. What the hell you doing, boy? Rocket slowly picked himself up. I could tell by how you talked about him. This Ego is bad news. We're here to save Quill. For what? Huh? For honor? For love? Yondu replied. Rocket scoffed. No, I don't care about those things. I want to save Quill so I can prove I'm better than him. I can hold this over him forever. His response caused the blue-skinned Ravager to burst out laughing, but this laughter felt more like it was laughing at him, and not with him. The raccoon scrunched his face up at Yondu's laughter, his muzzle falling in disappointment. What are you laughing at me for? Yondu stumbled forward, a smug expression plastered on his face as he walked towards the window of the ship. You can fool yourself and everyone else, but you can't fool me. I know who you are. You don't know anything about me, loser. The Ravager turned round, a face full of anger. I know everything about you. Rocket breathed a sigh of disgust, his muzzle turned up with a tinge of vexation. I know you play like you're the meanest and the hardest, but actually you're the most scared of all. Shut up. I know you steal batteries you don't need, and you push away anyone who's willing to put up with you, 'cause just a little bit of love reminds you of how big and empty that hole inside you actually is. I said shut up. Who was this scumbag, this pirate of all people, to dictate who or what he felt towards others? I know them scientists what made you, never gave a rat's ass about you. His words were like daggers, tearing into the animal's conscience inch by inch. I'm serious, dude. Just like my own damn parents who sold me, their own little baby, into slavery. I know who you are, boy. He bent down to Rocket's height, his eyes narrowing at the creature. Because you're me. And just like Yonda had stared into his own soul and tore it straight out, he hated the fact that he was right about everything, especially the point about love. What kind of a pair are we? He muttered, staring straight back into the eyes of the man who he realized wasn't so different to him after all. Yonda had been right. But it had been that conversation, that exchange with him, that had changed Rocket's perspective that day. He would finally let people into his life. He would finally learn to accept love. He would finally have a family. But now, Thanos had cost him his family. How he would give just for one more day with Peter and everyone else. In the time that had passed, the group had decided to give Vision a burial within the grounds of Wakanda. It was the least they could do for him after everything that had transpired. A dirt mound topped with a small cross made from sticks was left to remember the fallen Avenger. Each one of the comrades said a small word about him, with Rogers taking the lead eulogy. Vision had only been alive for a few years, but for everyone else, it had seemed like they had been friends for a lifetime. So now, what do we do? The genetically modified raccoon asked as he rejoined the group heading towards a Wakandan ship. We need to get back to base, Bruce replied. Maybe we can research more into the stones. Find out what's going on with the world right now. Billions had died, and it looked like there was nothing that Earth's mightiest heroes could do about. Sakura made her way across the village to a small apartment a few blocks away from the Forest of Death. Approaching a burgundy-colored door, she knocked a few times. A second or two went by, and the door opened to reveal a tall man with rugged brown hair, a plain black shirt, matching black pants, and a helmet donned with a Konoha headband. Hey there, Sakura, greeted the man with a pleasant expression. What can I do for you? Yamato Taishu, she bowed slightly. Is this a bad time? No, I just finished a session of meditation. Please come in. He opened the door gently, guiding her into his apartment. Yamato's place was quite simple. A living space with an open-plan kitchen and dining table, a bedroom and bathroom just off to the side, and what appeared to be a broom closet next to the door. She sat down on one of the chairs in front of the coffee table. Would you care for some tea, Sakura? The Jonin asked, reaching for a box of green tea in his cupboard. Please, thank you. The former ANBU captain prepared 2 cups of tea and momentarily sat down with the young medical ninja. He took a sip as the girl in front slowly held the cup in both her hands, carrying a perplexed expression on her face, her eyes not leaving the floor. Yamato had seen this look before and wondered what he could do to help his teammate. Sakura, he began softly, is there anything wrong? You can trust me with anything. I know you've not known me as long as Kakashi, but if there's one thing I can promise you, I am a damn good listener and I'm willing to help you out with whatever you need. She was taken aback by his words, remembering that this man had saved her life from the terrible incident that had befallen her closest friend, Naruto. As the boy's name crossed her mind again, her lip quivered in hesitation, trying to think of the right words to say. Thank you, Yamato Taishu. It's just she paused, as she pictured the fox Jinchuriki staring back at her with a smile. It's just that Naruto. I don't know, lately I've been feeling different around him. Yamato placed down his cup after another sip, adjusting his posture slightly. Different, you say? He blinked, as he reminisced on the Tenchi Bridge incident. If he hadn't stopped Naruto when he had done so, the fallout could have been even more destructive than what had taken place. It has been a few weeks since the, I can imagine you're still in shock from seeing that. It's not that, it's... Again, hesitation conquered her emotions, gripping her thoughts like a vice, strangling the life out of her. She breathed deeply, keeping her composure calm. It's just I felt hopeless, and now I feel like I want to protect him more than ever. I don't want to see him that way again. The image of the four-tailed fox came back to haunt her, the deadly white eyes, The demonic fangs and claws as she remembered his beast form taking over his whole body. The horrific way his skin peeled off and the way his bones contorted in that of a beast. The sight had made her quiver in fear. She tightened her hands around the cup, feeling like it would crack in her hand any second. Tears began stinging her eyes as her emotions reached the breaking point of her. Yamato, seeing her distress, reached over and gently placing his hand on her shoulder and took the cup away from her. Sakura, you love him, don't you? Sakura raised her head, looking back at him with watery eyes. Love? What? But, that's what I wanted to say to you before he woke up from his injuries, he carried on, his tone of voice reassuring her. Sakura, I can tell from what I witnessed on our mission, from what I experienced in those few days with you both, is that you love him. You just don't know how to express it, but I've seen how you two are. You reassure him, you make him feel safe. You want him to succeed in everything he does. The pink-haired Kunoichi let her tears fall down her cheek. If she didn't know better, it was like Yamato was reading her like an open book. What if I'm wrong? She continued, her voice cracking slightly as she sobbed. What if I don't love him and these feelings of mine aren't real? All I'll do is end up hurting him again. A flood of memories hit her like a ton of bricks. Their first mission together, the entry into the Chunin exams, the confrontation with Orochimaru in the forest, the night Sasuke left and she had asked Naruto to bring him back, the horrific sight when she had seen Naruto in the hospital after the mission had failed, all the extra time they had spent together going on missions months before he had left the village for his training. Each thought shined bright in her mind like stars in the night sky, a sky that had been clouded by a wave of darkness from the loneliness and pain she had suffered over the years. Yamato produced a small smile on his lips. I'll be honest with you, Sakura. With the life I've led up to now, I don't know what love really is. I've never had the chance to experience it how everyone else would. But I do know when you want to make someone happy, you'll do everything in your power to accomplish that. Naruto is a special individual, as you know. He has all the love and support from people around him. And I know he's at his happiest when he's with you. Wiping her eyes, she regained her composure. Yamato Taishu, Her lips formed a small smile. Feeling comfort from her superior's words. You're right. I guess I just need some more time is all. The Jonin nodded. I'm sure you'll make the right decision. Naruto needs someone like you in his life. He sat back down in his chair and took another sip of his drink. The conversation had been reassuring, and it was up to her now to work out how she truly felt for the blonde. If you don't mind me asking, by the way, how's your friend, the god? He asked, wanting to change the conversation. Sakura grew startled when he had mentioned Thor. Wait, how did you? Kakashi told me. Don't worry. I'm not one to gossip or anything. He trusts me with information like this. After all, I did work under him for a few years. He's fine, I guess, she replied, scratching the back of her head sheepishly, not wanting to relive the past events of today. Quite strange, really. Have you ever heard of a god of thunder, Taicho? Can't say that I have, he answered with shrugged shoulders. Though it does sound like something out of myth. Sakura giggled slightly. That's what Naruto said. What a goofball. She smiled sweetly as another thought of him entered her mind. But he's a goofball who knows how to bring out the best in people. Speaking of Naruto and Thor, the two had spent the last hour or doing some meditation and relaxation exercises. The fox boy was bamboozled at why someone with the title of God of Thunder would be doing such a thing such as this. So tell me why this is a thing again. Naruto spoke with a slightly bored tone. Both had been sat cross-legged on the floor for a while now in silence, leaving the young ninja questioning the nature of this. If you want to become strong, you must discipline your mind as well as your body. Train yourself not to think irrationally and stay calm under pressure, Thor replied, not opening his eyes. It did wonders for my friend Banner. You mean the guy who transforms into that Hulk thing? Naruto shuddered at the thought of a massive rage monster. Yes, sounds like an oxymoron if you think about it, but if it keeps him calm, I can't argue with that. He breathed deeply once more, opening his eyes. Right, that's enough for today. Sleep beckons me. He stood up, stretching his legs proudly. What is the plan for tomorrow, Naruto? Naruto stood up, stretching his arms out. I don't know. I usually do some sparring in the morning, but we could also check with Tsunade Bacon if she has found any more information regarding your dimension travel stuff. Thor concurred with a grin. Sounds promising. I look forward to it. Tell me, why do you call her that? Because she's actually a lot older than she looks. She just hides it under a jutsu. The Asgardian looked positively baffled. You don't say? She doesn't look it. Well, there's a lot of things I don't get about you know. But that's what makes life more interesting. He yawned heavily, heading towards his bedroom. Good night, Thor. Thor positioned himself on the couch, placing the cushions underneath his head. Good night, Naruto. Sleep well. He laid staring the ceiling in deep thought, recollecting everything that had happened today, from being sent to another world, to taking in a whole new culture and making new friends. This had been one day the God of Thunder would probably remember for years to come. In the distant region of outer space, on a planet, designated only as Planet 0259S, known to others as the Garden, the Titan known as Thanos sat upon a rock, looking at the sun as it set over the horizon. His mood was peaceful, complete and satisfied. The deed he'd set out to do had now been done. His role as a savior, one that no one else could understand, was something he took a lot of pride in. His expression turned to one of a smirk, knowing that he had won. Everyone who had tried to defy him, all those who had tried to kill him, had failed. His face fell a little as he remembered the last thing he saw before he disappeared. The vision of his now-dead daughter, Gamora. Did you do it? Yes. What did it cost? Everything. The sound of her voice, the orange world that had engulfed him as he witnessed the effect of the Soul Stone, the final painful look she had given him before fading into nothing. Had it all been worth it? He peered down at the destroyed, burnout gauntlet on his hand, the smoldering cracks, the ruptured knuckles, and the placement of the now-used gems that laid molten into the divine object. It was all a sign that by killing billions, he had saved millions more. No one else could truly understand this, he murmured, taking a closer look at the stones. They never understood what it truly meant to save a world. He closed his eyes, recollecting the final blow that the Asgardian had laid to his chest. The wound, though fully healed by the effects of the Time Stone, still hurt mentally. He had come close to death in that split second, but the foolish warrior had failed to kill him in the right spot. What caught his eye next surprisingly was the sight of the blue space stone as it began to pulse its mystical cerulean light. The pulse grew more rapid as it began to glow brighter and brighter, causing Thanos to cover his eyes with his opposite hand. What is this? The job was done. What is this thing doing? He growled as the blue engulfed him for what seemed like an eternity. He blinked for a few moments, as the light slowly faded away again. When his vision returned to normal, the stone's glow had completely burned out, leaving a rusted rock in its place on the gauntlet. What is going on? There's something else here at work. To be continued. A/N. Thank you for reading and getting to the bottom once again. I decided to cut in a few different scenes since in Infinity War. The action cuts to a few weeks later, and we don't see much of what happens before the beginning sequence of Endgame. Rocket Raccoon I put a bit more focus on, and I enjoyed his character arc that started off in the first Guardians movie, and having the Yondu flashback from Guardians 2 here I really wanted to cement how far he had come. Speaking of Marvel, I am caught up with WandaVision and I have seen what has occurred in terms of the finale, and Vision's character, so maybe I'll work this into the story at some point. As for the Naruto meditation scene, I don't recall anywhere prior to the Toad Sage training arc where Naruto does such a thing, and Jiraiya doesn't mention it, so I thought it would be a good thing to introduce for Naruto. Plus more bonding with Thor I thought was nice. If I'm wrong, please do let me know. The next chapter will be a bit more action-orientated, so stay tuned for that. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you all. Let me know what you thought of this chapter. Finally, in case you're wondering what the bizarre chapter titling is about, I've taken inspiration from the series Bleach, where the manga chapters are often quite bizarre and don't make sense, but in the grand scheme of things they look cool on the outset. Next time, Clash with the Thunder.